Hi, I'm Mitch Albom, and I just got finished talking with Kara in a lovely discussion. I did not know that she was a therapist until I sat down in this chair, but now it's very clear to me that she is a therapist because I feel like I've gone through a therapy session, and it was a really beautiful exchange of ideas and thoughts and stories.
I wasted years of therapy. I could have just come on this podcast.
You probably got more info out of celebrities than anyone else.
In my private life, I was living a nightmare.
This was definitely no stock podcast.
I think we ought to do this every week now.
Right.
Have you ever had writer's block?
Mm-hmm.
Never. Yeah, that is a gift. I think that's great.
Never.
So so your brain is constantly working. It's on all the time. It always has been, I imagine, even when you were a kid.
Yeah, unfortunately, always has been. Never shuts off.
Does that sometimes turn into an issue?
Yeah, my wife would probably say so. Like, hey, hello, over here. Oh, sorry, I was just thinking about some idea that I had. Well, can we focus on what we were talking about? Yeah, sorry. Oh, wait, I got another idea. So I think that's a curse of a creative mind, I guess. But yeah, like I say, I'd rather have that than the other way around. So.
Yeah. I don't know about you. I can just sit and stare into space and just think of things.
Yeah. Called daydreaming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Less common today. than it
Yeah,
used
much
to be.
less common today. In fact, that's probably a dying art because today kids, their dreams, anything that they could think up pales in comparison to what they can see on their screen. So when you're, I remember when I was a kid, we would play like army men, you know, they had those little army men and stuff, but we'd only have like one or two army men, that's all we had. So we would take balled up tissues, used tissues, I hate to say it, and they would be like the tank and they would be the person. And I remember there was like a lot next to our house that there was nothing built on, it was just construction. And we would just go play in the dirt, and we'd make little holes, and we'd say, well, that's a truck, and that's an arm. And they were just balled up tissues.
Yeah.
And now they probably wouldn't let you do it because of the germs and plus the imagination. You could just witness a whole battle on your screen. Why would you have to have balled up tissues be a tank? So, yeah, imagination is an endangered species.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did a lot of dramatic play too when I was little. We had little, like, you remember those Fisher Price people?
Yeah.
That was my favorite.
you would
I could
make up
spend like
plays.
the whole day making up scenarios that were going on with people. And then my kids also had Playmobiles, which is kind of similar.
Yeah, that's nice.
So you can there's still some things out there, I think, where you can dream some things up.
Yeah, I hope so.
Okay, so you have a new book out, and how'd you dream this one up? Oh, by the way, before you tell me about how you dreamt it up, congrats. I hear it's also going to be a Netflix movie.
Yeah. It's the first time that's ever happened that I've had books turned into movies before, but this is the first time that there's ever been like a bidding war on a book that hadn't come out yet. You know, I guess they want to see if people like it, but I guess maybe the idea of it, for whatever reason, there was a bunch of people interested in it beforehand. And Netflix, with Paul Weitz, who they hired to write it and direct it, which was a big part of it because I met him and really liked him. He wrote, he's done many movies, but About a Boy, you know, with Hugh Grant, that one, and Fatherhood, most recently with Kevin Hart, and Murderbot, that's on Apple. But I really liked him. When I met him, he had the whole book laid out and underlined, and he knew it better than I did. So I said, well, you're a perfect person for this, and Netflix, put together a good package of it. So yeah, it's already in motion, and the book hasn't come out yet.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So how long did that take that you were talking and?
Fast,
Yeah?
Weeks, just some weeks, not even months.
So what do you think that's about then, that it didn't even get released and they were already all over it?
Probably the theme of it. It's a love story, and it has two very attractive characters, you know, a guy and a girl, and And it's got magic, and it's about time travel a little bit, and maybe I can't. You'd have to ask them, but I'm guessing that's kind of thing that makes for a good movie. So
I think it probably
hopefully
does.
it makes for a good book. That's
it
my
does.
concern.
Well, I think it did. I finished it,
Oh, good.
and I think it made it for a good book for sure.
Thank you.
And the ending was good as well. You know,
Gotta have that.
I feel like that would be a tricky thing to land every book, every story. So as I'm getting to the end, I was kind of like, okay, where is this going to go? Especially as you get towards, I'm not going to give anything away, especially as you get towards the very end.
Right.
It's like, okay, what can we do here? And you did something.
Well, that's my job.
That's your job. So did you think of the ending, which is also good that's also good for a Netflix movie. Who am I kidding?
Yeah.
An ending.
Yeah, no, I mean, and a happy ending. Yeah, I tend to know my endings before I start writing. I don't know my middles. I generally have an idea about the beginning, but I do want to know sort of where I'm headed towards at the end. And in this particular case, you know, given the nature of the story and that there's time travel involved and all that, yeah, if you don't have an ending, you can kind of go off the rails and get lost in the magic of it all. So it was good to have an ending.
That's true. Speaking of which, I just had somebody on the show who was on the show Lost, and it was that kind of situation where they didn't necessarily have an ending, I think, at the beginning, and then it went a little off the rails.
Yeah. See, they got lost.
They got lost,
Yeah.
exactly, literally
Yeah.
and figuratively.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to get lost.
No, I don't think you got lost at all, that's for sure. So, okay, so you have these ideas. So this is a relationship that's going on in this book.
Yeah.
And did you use something, like did something give you this idea? Someday you were like wandering through the
Well, I
fields or
usually,
something?
so ever since I wrote Tuesdays with Morrie, and that book was broken down, like every Tuesday we talked about a different topic with my old professor who was dying from Lou Gehrig's disease. And, one Tuesday was about marriage, and one Tuesday was about money, and one Tuesday was about forgiveness and all. And so I think I've always sort of thought like that, like, well, let's have a theme for the book, and then let's write a story around the theme. So the 5 people you meet in heaven, for example, a lot of people thought I wanted to write a book about heaven, but it wasn't. I wanted to write a book about people who don't think that they matter and how everybody matters. And so I just ended up constructing a story about a guy who goes to heaven and meets people from his life, because that's how he learned that he mattered. But the theme was about, everybody matters. In Twice, the theme was, we always think the grass would be greener in a different relationship or, with a different person. And what if you actually could make that happen? You might find out that you were wrong. And so I wanted to do that. So I came up with a story about a guy named Alfie who has the magical ability to go back and do everything in his life twice. But he has to live with the consequences of the second try. So he can't say, oh, the first one was better, I want the first one. No, because you made a decision to change it, so be it. And he goes through his life kind of, fixing his little mistakes and changing his bad grades to good grades and embarrassments with teenager stuff in school. But then when he becomes a man, he finds out that there's one caveat to the power, and that is it doesn't work with love. In fact, it's kind of the opposite. If you have a true love, someone loves you really truly, and you decide to go try somebody else, that person can never love you again. They can be in the world and you'll know them and all the history, but they can't feel the same way about you. So there's really is a consequence to that second try. And of course, he has this perfect woman and it's a perfect relationship or from the outside, but something happens within him. He gets tempted and there's a fight, and at a very critical moment, he makes that very fateful decision to, let's see what else is out there, and then has to face the consequences of his actions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, don't give it all away.
No,
Let everybody read it.
Yeah, all right.
Because
I'll
it is
stop there. Yeah.
Because you keep wanting to read it as you're
Yeah.
going. So
Yeah.
and it's easy to get into. Some books take a bit to get into.
Yeah.
Not this one.
No, it starts when he's young, and you find out. It's kind of a dramatic scene how he finds out that he has the power because his mother dies when he's 8 years old, and he misses it. he goes out and she dies, and so he so wants to make up for that. He goes to sleep, like crying about it. If only I hadn't done that. And when he wakes up the next day, it's the day before. And that's when he realizes he has this power, and he gets a chance to try to fix that moment. So right from the very get-go, you already see that it happens. And I think that probably resonates with a lot of people because, let's face it, if you ask somebody if you could do something over again, what would it be? Many people would say, well, when my mother died, or my father, or my husband, my child, if I wish I had said this, or I wish I had been there for that. So I got a chance to sort of create that, and I think a lot of people probably will read that and say, oh, I wish I could have that happen to me.
That's actually an interesting question you could just ask people generally.
Yeah.
Like, if you could change one thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes I ask that on my
Yeah.
show, actually.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
if you could go back and change one thing that happened or one thing about yourself,
Yeah, yeah.
what would it be?
Yeah.
I'm asking you now.
Well,
what would
see,
you
so
do?
I look at it a little differently because, and I guess maybe having written a book about a guy who does that, I could list 25 things for you right now.
Yeah.
I would have done this differently and this differently, this differently. But if you said to me, well, by going back and doing it over again, you would have to sacrifice what you learned from making the mistake, then I would say I wouldn't change anything, because what I learned helped shape me for the next time, or help make me the person I am now that has the wisdom maybe not to do something again. So if you get to keep taking the same test over and over again, you don't necessarily learn it. You just keep fixing the one mistake that you had, and then that's it. So there's a price that you pay for having a chance to go back and do it over again. And if that price is you don't learn the lesson that you learned the first time, then I wouldn't do it. If you get to learn the lesson and all that, then I would start when I was, 15, and I could rattle off a bunch of stuff.
Go on,
that
give me a
would-
few.
Oh, I would have tried to make an Olympic team, because I think it would have been great to participate in Olympics. And I had no idea that there were all these sports, little sports, that you could have tried that, you would have had a chance. I always thought, well, you're either on the basketball team or track and field, or you don't, but I could have gone into luge or things like that and made it, but by the time I realized that, it's too late in my life. I would have, I would have done things differently in the music business. I was a musician before I was a writer, and I walked away from it because I wasn't doing well in it, and I just got so frustrated, and I probably wouldn't have. If I went back, I would see what the things that were frustrating me were just the outside world and not the love of music, and I would have probably stayed with it and done something a little different. But I might not have become a writer,
Right, yeah.
So who knows? That might not have happened, Oh, there's places I would have traveled to, and things I wouldn't have traveled to, and you can go through.
Where
all,
would you not have
list.
traveled to?
Oh, there were some bad experiences that I don't want to go into that I would have stayed away from. I got held up once at a dry cleaning store. I got a gun pulled on me, and if I knew that I could go back and avoid that, because I had a lot of bad dreams about that, I got put in a closet with some older people the guy had a heart attack in the closet while we were there, while the guy was robbing the store, and it was a very traumatic thing, and I would have preferred not to have had that happen.
Yeah.
But in its own way, it prepared me for some traumas that happened later in life, so I do believe that you could say all things happen for a reason, or you could say that God has a plan, or whatever the way you look at it. But I do think everything contributes to your tapestry. It all gets stitched together, and only at the very end do you get to look back at the whole tapestry and say, well, now this makes sense, that this happened for this reason and this reason, and I'm hopefully not at the end of the tapestry yet. So,
Yeah.
There's still things happening for reasons I don't understand.
Yeah, I think that's true, though, and it is that kind of thing. And a good TV series, a good movie, a good book will have that same thing. Like, you might not know why something is happening, or be like,
Right.
what is this?
Right.
And then if you pull back, there's a series that I recommended it to my daughter recently. It's on Netflix, and it's called Love Life. And I said, I don't know if you're going to like watching this or not. It's a series of maybe 10 episodes. And I'm not going to give too much away, but it's about this woman played by Anna Kendrick. And she starts off dating somebody. And you think it's just like a dating show. So my daughter started watching it. She's like, I'm not into this. Put it away. And I said, just stay with it, because trust me, it's about the arc. You're going to be so moved by this series. I was, as like with every episode, the whole thing was an arc of this woman's a certain situation in her life. And it needed the 10 episodes, but it became a beautiful thing. So sometimes you need to like step back, go up into that, the perspective, what do they call it? Like 10,000 feet, 100, whatever. What is that term?
30,000.
30,000.
Yeah.
And look at things like that.
Yeah.
And then things become clear.
Particularly with love. And I enjoyed writing about love with this book, too. And I think, I've reached a point where I can appreciate love in a way that I couldn't have if I was writing this in my 30s. I do think that love is one of those things in life that you can't rush. You can get into it. You can fall in love when you're younger. You can think you found the perfect person when you're younger, but you won't really understand what it takes and what love requires until a certain amount of years have passed. Because part of what real love requires is growing older together and understanding that someone isn't the same person that you married when you were young and thrilled and everybody looked good and nobody had any wrinkles and, fat and anything like that. And you can't appreciate that when you're at that early age. So getting a chance to write about this and having known, I've been very blessed. I have a wonderful wife and I've known what it's like to be loved and to feel loved, but to appreciate it, I think, takes a certain amount of time. And so I think I've reached that stage in my life where hopefully I've written a book that will resonate with people about love who are younger than me as well as older than me.
Yeah, I think it will. I mean, it conveyed that special thing. It was very romantic.
Yeah.
It's a romantic book.
Thank you.
And you've been married to your wife for a long time, right?
30 years married, 7 years before that, so 37 years together. We had a slow courtship. My fault, not hers.
Why? What did you do?
I delayed. I did what every guy did back then, Well, yeah, we'll get married soon. And soon turned to 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. And finally she put her foot down and said, if you're not serious about this, can't keep delaying. And then I got scared, and then we got married. I should have done it sooner, but anyhow, we were together with each other all that time. So, and kind of say we're together 37 years.
So how do you come up with these like romantic stories? It does kind of feel like, and you're saying that it's your experience of experiencing love long term through all the different phases of life, and as both of you change. But it also is like, okay, so you've been with one person, so it does make maybe the reader wonder, how does he get all these ideas about different
Well, I've been with one person, but first of all, I was with somebody before my wife, who I was actually engaged to, and then she ran off with somebody. And so I know what it's like to sort of think that you have one future, and then boom, it's gone. And you start to question, well, was I at fault? What did I do? Is this ever, I guess I'm never going to have that again. And then you start searching for it again, and then you realize you never will have that again. What you will have is something different. And hopefully that something different becomes something better. And then, will I make that same mistake again? Will the same thing happen to me again? So I've gone through a lot of that myself, and then I've also observed it in other people. And, one of the things that a writer does is observe other people's experiences and absorb them and put them into a book. Not every writer who writes about this happening or that happening had it happen to them, but chances are they witnessed it. They witnessed it in their parents' relationship. They witnessed it in their brother or sister's relationship. They witnessed it with their friends, and they absorb it. So if you start counting all the various experiences I have either gone through myself or witnessed with other people, I've run the whole gamut of it. And as I say, a certain amount of time happens as you get older that you can start to see how foolish you were when you were younger, or what you thought was so true about love when you were younger, and how that fades. So I got to follow Alfie, the protagonist in the book, from the time he's 8 all the way through till his late 50s. And I got to write about him in junior high school. There's a crush that he has on a little girl, and a girl his age, and a little makeout party that they have, and then a girl who he has a crush on in high school, and kind of the impossible. You'll never go out with her, and yet he gets to go out with her. And then at college, and then his first serious romance after college, and then moving in with somebody and all that. So, and I remember all that, when I went through it. And so you see love at a bunch of different stages.
Yeah. It's also interesting what you were saying about how your ex-fiance broke up with you,
Yeah.
right? So another thing that's common, I think, for a lot of people is that after a breakup, they think that's it. Like they
Yeah.
are never going to be able to get over
Yeah.
what just happened.
Yeah, yeah.
You can't see it.
Yeah.
But that's one of those things that if you were to step back and see the big arc of your life, you will get
That's
over
right.
that person.
That's right.
But it's like too bad that you can't have that knowledge
Yeah.
as you're going through it.
Yeah. But if you did, you might not have done what you did. So again, you have to, things. I can't tell you how many times people have told me, like, when that happened, I was so upset, or I was so brokenhearted. But now that I look back on it, it's the best thing that could have happened to
Sure.
me. And it's funny because you say, well, if it's the best thing that could have happened to you 10 years later, it was the best thing that could have happened to you back then. But you didn't see it that way. Wouldn't it be something if we just say, well, you know what, this happened, it's probably the best thing that will happen to me. No, you don't say that. You go,
Right.
It's terrible, I'll never get past it, I'm brokenhearted. And only 10 years later do we see it. So that's what I mean by perspective,
Yeah.
And that only comes with time. So one thing you can't rush.
But you can. I think you can use what you just said in the present. And you can say to yourself, this may just be the best thing that ever happened to me. Well, it has to be may just because
Yeah.
in the moment you
Right.
don't feel that necessarily, but
Right.
you can train yourself to see it that way.
And if you can, you'll be much happier.
Much happier.
Yeah.
Much happier. So I don't know if you know this, I'm a therapist also. So
Oh,
I
are
have
you?
this
Oh,
therapeutic.
you should use that on your patients.
Oh, I do.
Yeah, okay.
I do. But I mean, at the same time, it's like if you can look at it that way,
Yeah.
you are going to be much happier. It's not going to wipe out all of the misery,
Right.
but it is something that will take you through it.
Yeah, it's 100% true. And I have written a lot about loss. Obviously, Tuesdays with Morrie is kind of themed in that, and then a lot of the other books that I've written have had, people have died in them or whatever. And so I've had to explore the whole idea of how do you deal with loss, how do you get over loss, the feeling that you have when you lose something or somebody that, oh, I'll never get past this. And there's a wonderful expression, the only whole heart is a broken heart, meaning you can only really appreciate the things you have if you've lost them or you've experienced loss. So you can't have a whole heart unless it's got cracks in it, because otherwise how would you know how precious something is if you've never lost it? How would you know how precious a person is if they were always the same and they never aged and they never got sick and you never lost them and they never went away, they never broke your heart or anything like that. And this book, Twice, I get to write about what happens when you lose love. And that's a different kind of loss. Losing a loved one to death, that's different. You say, if only you were still here, if only you were still here. When you lose love, the person's still there. And what happens when they don't feel the same way about you? And maybe you have to still see them again. Or maybe you were once married and now you're not, but you have to still deal with the children or whatever. And it's a whole different feeling of losing love, because you start to feel like there's something the matter with you, or you'll never be loved again that way, And that was really interesting to write about. And that's what, one of the consequences of Alfie's second lives that he gets to do is he loses the love that he never should have lost.
Yeah, all right, you're giving more away.
Oh, sorry, I know. You keep me talking.
I know. And I'm like, hold on, let everybody find that out for themselves, like I did. I like the way that it was just unfolding as nobody had told me in advance, so it was like, oh wait, what?
But you were preparing for a show.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they'll get the book and they'll pick it up themselves and they'll and they'll see all of these things.
I won't tip any more bits. Then.
Yeah, please, because you don't need to. It's I'm telling everybody, it's a good story. It's a good book. Go out and get it.
All right, thank you.
But it is interesting too what you said also about how we do think there's something wrong with us, and that is so common. That's so typical of the human experience. Is when something doesn't go right, especially with somebody else, it's like, oh, I'm not good enough.
Must be my
There's
fault.
something wrong with me, and especially as a kid, if something happens to you when you're a kid, or something that's no fault of your own, or maybe your parents weren't great and they didn't raise you in such a wonderful way, and then you think there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
It's the worst, and it takes a while to get over that if you get help.
It's nice that you know that and you can share that with people. And also, when you lose somebody, I've come to conclude, if I were a therapist, that if you look at it as what you had instead of what you lost, it's quite different. My wife and I, we adopted one of our kids from our orphanage in Haiti. She had a brain tumor. She was 5, and we brought her up, and basically she became our daughter, and she lived with us for the next 2 years as we tried to find a cure for this thing around the world. And it was an uncurable thing, but they told us she would die in 4 months. She lived over 2 years. And during that time, we got to have a family, which is something that we didn't have because we didn't have kids of our own. And after she died, I was very angry with God and with the world. And, how could you, she's 7. I mean, what did she do wrong? She's 7. And how could you take her, And it was only a few years later when I was actually writing a book called The Stranger in the Lifeboat. And there's a scene in it where a guy gets to talk to God and says, and his wife died, and he said, why did you take my wife? Why did you break my heart? Why did you take my wife? And God says to him, why is it that when you humans lose somebody dies, you always say, why did you take them from me? How come you don't say, what did I do to deserve you giving them to me? And I was really writing from my own kind of broken heart about our little girl. And when I came to realize that, well, we had these 2 years that were amazing, and we got to have a family in our 50s that, biologically we probably shouldn't have normally had. And we had all this love and all these memories. What did we do to deserve that? Why? Why us? And there's so many couples that never get that opportunity. And when I come to the conclusion that we didn't lose a child, we were given one, I started to heal. And I think that that's a better way of looking at loss in all cases as well. Oh, my mother died. Why did she have to die? She was only 80. Well, you got 80 years, or the years you had with her, Or why did I have to lose that job? I was good at it. Well, did you like it? Yeah. And how long were you there? 10 years. Well, you had 10 years at a job that you like. How many people never work at a job that they like, So what did you do that's so much more special than them that you got 10 good years? And if you start to view it that way, you're grateful instead of angry. And grateful is a very calm way to be. Anger is not. Anger is volatile, and resentment is volatile. So I'm trying. I don't succeed all the time, but I try to look at loss of all kinds that way.
Yeah, and it's a choice too.
Yeah.
Which way you decide to look at it.
Right, totally.
Right, so you're not stuck having to be angry and resentful.
Right.
You can actually determine, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try to get to a place of gratitude.
Right.
You could be my secondary therapist. I feel like we could go in as
tag
a team.
team.
Yeah.
I'll do Tuesdays. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
You really do have a lot of that perspective. It's today it's called mindset shift or reframing, and it's so there's some terms for it that are kind of hip, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
Although I never use the word
Mine
hip,
is
but
more forged from experience
Yeah.
in that, when I wrote Tuesdays with Morrie, I I always remember Amy Tan, the wonderful writer of the Joy Luck Club. She's a friend of mine. And when I wrote Tuesdays with Morrie, I was a sports writer at the time, so I'd never written a book like that. And I had no idea if I knew what I was doing at all, And so I sent it to her before it came out. And I said, would you please tell me if this is any good?
Yeah.
I mean, you at least write these kinds of stories, mother and daughter sort of. So she read it and she wrote me back and she said, well, I got two things to say to you. One, it's a good book and you're going to be surprised at how many people are going to like it. And she proved to be right about that because it was a tiny book and nobody ever expected it to do anything. And I only wrote it to pay Morrie's medical bills. It was a nothing. They printed 20,000 copies for the world. That was it. It was supposed to be done with it. So she was right about that. But the second thing she said was, you're about to become everybody's rabbi. And I did not know what she meant, but I do now. Because, as Tuesdays with Morrie became kind of part of the zeitgeist, everybody who met me who had lost somebody felt like they could tell me their story. And people would stop me in airports and, restaurants or wherever and just say, my mother died of cancer and we read Tuesdays with Morrie before she died. Can I talk to you about her? And I would hear their story and I would hear their story. And this happened not hundreds of times, not even thousands, probably tens of thousands of times now in the 30 years since that's been published. And I have learned to listen and understand grief and understand loss and see what's the same about it and see what's different. And sometimes they expect me to have answers, which I don't. Sometimes they call me Morrie and I go, I'm not Morrie. Remember, he was the smart one. I was the stupid one, But I do try to learn from what I hear them say and their loss, their pain. And that's what leads me to the things that I've shared with you. Not because I read a lot of philosophers or studied psychotherapy or anything, but I've just watched what comforts people and what they need. And I've seen it enough times to know that if you look at the world through gratitude and like I was fortunate to have what I had for the time I had it, there's no room for resentment because you're busy being grateful.
That's the shift right there.
Yeah.
Amazing. Like, what would Morrie think? He really changed your life.
Yeah, sure.
And in more ways than just becoming the successful author.
Oh, yeah.
But like what you're saying, that you developed this understanding of the human experience and of grief that you never would have been exposed to if it hadn't been for this.
Oh, not even close.
Like you're so philosophical, it seems to me.
Well, now.
That's my question. Is
No.
it since then only?
Oh, if you had seen me, if you had known me when I was going to visit Morrie, it probably wouldn't even seem like the same person.
Oh.
And that's why I always laughed at like Morrie. He used to say to me, I'm going to make you cry. And I would go, yeah, yeah. And he would go, yeah, yeah. And I said, why do you want to make me cry? What's the big? Because you need to loosen up. You need to stop being so tough and macho and all this. I was a sports writer. We didn't cry. And so I always say now that he would be getting such a kick out of the fact, like he created this eternal graduate class that I am stuck in, and I have to keep going back every semester and do the same class over because wherever I go, I hear the same story. And it has made me much more empathetic and much more sensitive, none of which I was during that time with him.
What a gift.
So he kind of, in his own weird way, I don't know if he knew. Remember, Morrie never read a word of Tuesdays with Morrie. It wasn't like we worked on the book together.
Right.
I started writing it after he died, but he forced me to think and forced me to examine myself in ways that I never had. And then that book got other people to do the same thing. And then they brought their stories to me. And I've become the rabbi, like Amy Tan said, in small ways. And Morrie would get a good laugh wherever he is about that. See, I told you I was going to make you cry. I was going to make you sensitive. I was going to do all that. So some of it is just age, but a lot of it is just being the guy who wrote that book and being on the receiving end of the people who read it.
What an impact.
Yeah.
And also, of course, an impact on everybody who read it. Like, there are so many people who read it and were influenced by it. and who've also probably become, not to the extent that you have, they don't have tens of thousands of experiences of talking about people's situations, but where they were so deeply impacted by his thoughts that you put down on paper.
Well, it really taught me that, what you write can have impact. And it's probably the reason that I was asked earlier by someone, we were doing an interview, and he was asking about writing and like, what's the difference between, how you write or writing for yourself, whatever. And I said, I've never, since 2004, I've never written for myself. I've never written what interests me. I write what I think would be something positive for other people to read. That doesn't mean I don't enjoy the experience. Of course I do. And it doesn't mean I don't like the characters. I love them. But like, I like doo-wop music, 50s doo-wop music. I listen to it all the time. I find it very interesting about the bands that were in there. I will never write a book about it because that's what interests me. But I recognize that it's really niche, and I don't know that there's a lesson in it. I just like listening to the music. So when I sit down to write, I want to write something that will move people after they've read it and will get them to think about it afterwards. It would be wonderful if people said, boy, that guy can really turn a phrase. But it would mean more to me if they said, I couldn't stop thinking about the idea of that book after I read it. And it made me question something in my own life, or it made me re-examine something in my own life. That, to me, at least, is I feel like I've done something worthwhile in my life, or with my writing. Not just entertaining people, or not just, coming up with a exciting, thrilling plot or something, which is all good. And don't get me wrong, I love it. I read books like that all the time. I watch movies like that all the time. But it takes a couple years to do a book for me, from the thinking to the sitting to the writing to the editing to the going out. To do that for the sole purpose of just entertainment, for me, would feel a little, especially after Tuesdays with Morrie, would feel like I was letting people down. I feel like I ought to be doing something that gets people to think. And that's what I try to do in every book I write, in an entertaining way, but try to get people to think.
Yeah, wow. And that is the sign to me, is that you don't even necessarily know when you're reading it or watching it. Yeah. And then like the next day, it just keeps coming up. Like
right.
You're going about your day,
right.
And it just keeps floating up again.
Right.
It's powerful.
Right. Have you ever had movies like that? Like some movies you go to, and by the time you get home, your wife or your husband says, "How was the movie?" "It was all right." "What's it about?" I don't know. It's like this is a spy thing. Like you can barely remember the plot. And other movies, like you go to sleep thinking about them, and the next day they're still in your head, and you're remembering a line from it. And some movies are so good or so impactful that you remember lines years later, a scene that still stays with you, still makes you feel a certain way, I aspire to write something that's the book version of that. Yet, years later, somebody remembers a page or a passage or something that I wrote and says, I still think about that, still makes me think about it. That to me is, that's my North Star. That's what I'm shooting for.
Yeah, and I think you're right that it's a feeling also. Like it's not necessarily even always the words that you remember.
Right.
So I remember when I think about Tuesdays with Morrie, I read it when it first came out.
Right.
So I remember it, and I have a feeling when I remember it. So I didn't reread it before we talked. I remember it more about the feeling it gave me.
Yeah, good.
Than the words themselves.
Right.
But then I did do a little research, and I did look at some of the words, and I recognized a line in Twice from Morrie.
Oh, which was that?
Do you know that?
No, I mean...
really?
Yeah.
It's about
which
love
one?
Is the...
only rational act.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's actually deliberate.
Oh, yeah, I figured it would be. That's why I was surprised that you were like, not
well,
sure.
I can't remember everything. There's a lot of books out there.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, the philosophy of Morrie probably runs through every book that I wrote. But that particular sentence, Morrie said that to me multiple times about, it was a quote from somebody that he said, as he died, as he was reaching the end of his life, love was the only thing that made sense. And the quote was, love is the only rational act. And so again, in this book, it comes towards the end of the book. I don't want to you keep
Thank
warning
you.
me, don't
Thank
give it
you.
away. It comes towards
All right,
the
you're
end.
listening to me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. But yes, he says that line. I mean, I wasn't going to have him say, as the book Tuesdays with Morrie
Right.
said.
Right,
because,
but I was like, oh, there's a
you start
callback.
quoting yourself. But yes, that is the same line. Good eyes. Good,
Thank you.
yeah.
I was like, oh, there it is. And I was thinking to myself, one of the first things I was thinking was also like these lessons from him, how do they hold up today? And like, what are your thoughts on those lessons? So part of me was thinking maybe we'll go through some of them and you'll tell me what you think about how they apply to today. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I do a podcast of my own, a small podcast about Tuesdays with Morrie, where we play some of the tapes of the conversations that I had with Morrie every week, a couple of lines, and I talk about what they mean to me now or how they resonate now. So I'm constantly sort of in that universe of hearing his voice over again. And I do have to say, yeah, full 30 years later, so much of what he said to me is absolutely resonant today. Some of it scary, so like some of the things that he predicted. How mean we would become. And he back then he was talking about like Howard Stern, and now Howard Stern today is almost mild by comparison to what the internet is like. And I actually know Howard Stern a little bit. He's a nice guy. So I'm not saying anything disparaging, but 1995, Howard Stern was considered like a shock jock, or he was mean to people on the air.
I mean, he
couldn't do
was
that.
more intense then.
Yeah, and Morrie talked about what happens when we get used to being mean to one another, and then your response is to be more mean, and then he said, and eventually we're going to be at the point where we're going to be, well, I mean, what he was talking about is exactly what cable news is now, and the internet is now, and social media is now, that meanness and that insensitivity. It's almost like he was predicting the future, and he talked about money and what happens when money starts to become the arbiter of who we are, and it gathers all at the top, and what the resentment that it starts to create at the bottom, and it's all true. And of course, all the stuff about family, he talked about family being the only. He says, I never told anybody whether they should have a family or shouldn't have a family, should have kids or don't. I can only tell you there's nothing like that experience. You won't get it in anything else. You won't find a substitute for anything else. Well, I didn't have kids in my life until my 50s when I took over an orphanage in Haiti. And I've been running it ever since, and I've been there for 16 years. And I'm there every month, and I have hundreds of kids in my life now. And, 22 of them live up in the state of Michigan where I am, many of them in my house.
I didn't realize
and we have 18 in college, 2 in medical school. And we have a number of sick kids who kind of live with us, and they get treatment. And then we've adopted, or in the process of adopting, but she's been with us since she was 6 months, a little 3.5-year-old. So I get to see what it is to give love to a child that age, and from that age forward, rather late in life. And Morrie was right. There is nothing that compares to it. You'd be hard-pressed to come up with the actual words for having children in your life, but what you can say, and everybody can say across the board, is what he said. There is no experience that's the same as it. It's not the same as having a friend. It's not the same as having a girlfriend, a wife, a husband, a business partner, whatever. Children are their own thing, and if you want to have the experience of someone who is fully dependent on you, who's full of your life, have children. And those were just words to me for many years that I wrote in a book, but they were just words, because I didn't experience it personally. And now all of a sudden when I started experiencing it, I said, oh my God, this is exactly what he said it was. So I'm constantly amazed at how much of what Morrie talked about, whether it's about love being the only rational act, or about forgiveness and how you should forgive everybody in your life and yourself, and shouldn't wait till your dying day to do it, and how that has proven to me to be, even people that I had a really hard time forgiving, that I had to do that, and how he was right about that. So, yeah, I could go on, but I mean, it's kind of scary how correct and apropos he is even today.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. I mean, that's what we're talking about too, with that feeling of the things are coming up after. This is 30 years later, and
Yeah.
things are still coming up for you personally
Yeah,
from that book.
yeah,
Or,
yeah.
you know,
for
from
me.
from what he said, and
And
from
I
the
wrote
book.
it.
I know, from your own book
Yeah, yeah.
that you didn't even know as you're
Yeah.
writing it was going to be as impactful as it was.
Well, don't you find that there are things that your parents told you 30 years ago that are still affecting
Of
your life,
course.
right? Well, so in some ways, Morrie was kind of like a bit of a dad or granddad to me, and a lot of what I wrote down to him from him is the same as what your parents told you 30 years ago, and it still
Sure.
resonates with you. Why wouldn't it
Yes.
resonate with me?
Yeah, but not everybody's able to put those words,
No, true.
together and share them in such a way that teaches other people how to see things like
Well,
that.
he was a teacher, and I was able to take good notes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I also think that older people have so much perspective and have so much to give.
yeah.
And it's just, they fascinate me
Yeah.
generally. They always have. I've always been interested in talking to older people,
Yeah,
like
me
a lot
too.
older. And it's like, I don't understand why our society thinks younger is everything,
Yeah.
because the real interesting stuff is from the older
Yeah.
people.
Well, you're right. It's our society, though. There are many societies in the world that
Sure.
see it the other way.
Yeah.
Japanese society for one, Native American society for two. And I think those societies have it more correct than we do. Being old doesn't mean useless, and it's the other way around. And it breaks my heart to see how we treat older people in this country, and how the fear that it has now engendered into people who hit their 50s and start thinking like, well, I'm going to be, obsolete soon, and I'm going to be useless soon. And the message that we're sort of sending, because we're such a commercially oriented society and we're all about consumerism. And so one of the things you learn if you work in radio or newspapers or things like I have in my life, that they basically say, well, we're not even interested in advertising to people who are old in their 50s or older, because not because they don't have money, because the truth is they have a lot of money.
That's all the expendable income.
That right, but we can't change their minds. They've already made up their minds. So their toothpaste, they're sticking with their toothpaste. We can't get them to change their toothpaste. Their car, they're sticking with their car. We can't get them. But an 18-year-old, we can change his mind if we make this commercial or this commercial. So they literally are going after like the naivete of youth, and that's where all the money's being spent. And of course, if that's where the money's being spent, then that's where the programming is going to be, because that's where you're going to put the advertising, whatever. So everything orients around youth, largely because youth is impressionable and you can sell youth things. And meanwhile, people who actually have finally earned money or whatever, they're just forgotten. And the only commercials they make for them, or the only things they make for them, are the about medicine, that they have to take. Like some of those ads where they come on at the end and they go, this can also kill you, and it can kill you this way, and it can kill you that way, and it can kill you that way. But take it. So it's sad to watch older people tossed aside by our society and told that their opinions don't matter, their buying power isn't going to be affected. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the older people are the best resource that we have.
Yeah.
And we foolishly often ignore them.
Foolishly, for sure. To our own peril.
Yeah,
Or at our own peril.
at our own peril, because you're doomed to repeat what they already
Right.
have gone through.
So all of your kids from the orphanage, do they get do you impart all of this wisdom?
I try. I mean, sometimes I'm speaking in Creole, so it's I'm not that good at that. And
How good are you at that at this
well,
point?
I can speak pretty fluently. Haitian kids and Haitians in general speak very, very quickly when they speak Creole, and they use a lot of colloquialisms and meshing words together. So it's not as easy to listen to as it is to speak.
Okay.
But if I want to communicate, I can say anything I want to say in Creole. And, because we have a lot of kids come in that they've never seen an American, never seen a white guy, and if all of a sudden I'm speaking English, that's not going to make them feel very much at home. So I had to learn the language. But they call me Mr. Mitch, our kids, and I do try to teach them the wisdom that Morrie has taught me, and my parents taught me, and my older relatives taught me, and it's a wonderful thing to feel like you have something to give to a child, and it's even more wonderful when they seek it out. And fortunately for me and for our kids, we don't have any television, we don't have any computers or internet or social media or radio or anything like that. So our kids, like if you were to come down and visit, I mean, they just sit with you and ask you lots of questions, like,
That's
what did
great.
you want to
Love
do when
that.
you were my age? And because they're interested in
Yeah.
people. They're not swiping left or right. They don't even know what any of that is. And so they do ask a lot of questions. And we have, every time I go down, I have a meeting with the teenage boys and a meeting with the teenage girls, and they give themselves, the boys call themselves the Young Gentlemen's Club. The girls call themselves the Amazing Girls Club, or different names. And then there's the next youngest group, and they call themselves the Younger Gentlemen's Club, and the younger. And these are kids starting from about age 11 or 12. I start meeting with them, separate from the other 50 kids that are there, whatever. And I just ask them, they have questions about life, or questions about relationships, questions about America, questions about what they're going to do with their lives, because Haiti is, it's a very poor country, and they don't get to leave the orphanage almost ever now with all the violence that's there. And some of the questions that they come up with, it's just, what does it mean to be a man, Mr. Mitch? What's the difference between love and lust?
How do you answer that?
Oh my God, very carefully.
Wait, how do you answer right?
Very
how do you answer,
carefully.
What does it mean to be a man?
I say to them, when you understand that the fate of other people is more important than what happens to you, and that you put other people's interests in front of your own, and that you recognize that if you have success, you're there to share it, and that people, there's a lot of need in the world, and you need to be sensitive to that need, and that you understand that just because you want to do something doesn't mean you can do it, because you have to consider the consequences and be responsible. These are all parts of being a man, or being a woman for that matter, I try, remember, I'm talking to 12 and 13-year-olds. I have to kind of keep it in
Sure.
basic terms and try to keep things simple and repeat. But they ask me, what does God want most from us? And I'm like, okay, you got to give me an easier question than that.
Right. I mean, I'm a rabbi and all. But give me a
I
break.
mean, come on. But I try to be humble about it, and I try to recognize that this is a great opportunity that I've been given to shape younger minds, and I got to be very careful about what I say. We emphasize humility at the orphanage. That's because I think if you're humble, you'll make a lot of right decisions, in other areas, because you won't be thinking that you somehow deserve better than the other. Giving, that's the essential. Giving is living, is what we always say, and that so our kids have to help and volunteer in other orphanages or other, even though they're beyond poor. I mean, I can't even describe the level of poverty we're talking about here. We're talking about living in holes in the dirt poverty, and no water and no electricity poverty. And yet, when they come to us, like before they can even go, once they graduate from our school, high school, before they can go to college, they have to spend a year out in the provinces helping people who are even more poor than them, delivering medical care to some of these villages, or helping with water, digging wells, anything like that, so that they understand that there are people who have it worse than they do, even though that they grew up in an orphanage. So giving is a big thing, and a little faith is a huge part of it. And I always say to them, I don't care what you do, I don't care how much money you make, I don't care how successful you are. all I care about is that you have a good heart, and if you're kind to people, then I'll always be proud of you. And you know, don't think that, oh, I have this job or I make this much money, that's going to make Mr. Mitch or Miss Janine, my wife, or any of the rest of the staff proud. Because if you're not a good person, it means nothing. And to see them get it and nod their heads and get it, because they're not swiping left and they're not watching TV shows and they're not listening to music that says all I need is a big fancy car and, you know, and dresses and I'm at the club and stuff like that. You know, they don't have any of that in their life, so they're more sponges. Now, when they come up here and they go to college, it starts becoming a different
Tricky.
challenge. Yeah, I mean, start seeing a little bit more of the world, but you know, that I think that's true for any parent who's raising kids. You know. It gets harder the older they get.
Yes. It's interesting because here you are, we're talking about how younger people are advertised to, targeted, because they're so impressionable.
Yeah.
So this is you with that same philosophy and using it for good.
Yeah,
The
'cause
you're
I
getting to-
have a
they're-
captive audience.
Yeah, you have a captive audience,
Yeah.
and like it's very easy to advertise to them an impression, you know, or make an impression on them.
Right, they're at that age where they are impressionable, but they're also at that age where they're curious, and so they do make mistakes. And I've had to employ forgiveness quite a bit with them, and I try to say to them, here's why I'm forgiving you. You know, you need to remember that you've been forgiven, and you need to be forgiving in your future, because somebody's going to hurt you or do something wrong to you too. And I want you to remember this moment that you were given grace, you know, and you were, you know, nobody held against you forever what you did wrong. And time will tell, you know, time will tell. There's still, our oldest are still in their 20s, so there's still much more to go. And we have a lot that are in their 2s and 3s and 4s.
It's pretty amazing. And then when you think about it, it started from Morrie.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
started from
Oh, I
this
never would
older
have
guy.
gone to Haiti if I hadn't been involved with Morrie. I wouldn't be sitting here with you if Morrie hadn't come into my life. I wouldn't have written books like Twice or any of the other books that I've written. I'd probably just be going to ball games, because I was a sports writer and I thought that's all I would ever do, and I'd probably still be arguing about who made the better trade or who's a better hitter or things like that. So Morrie, I'll give you a better one. The very first day of class at Brandeis, when I first met Morrie, I walked into his classroom. I had signed up for his class as a freshman. I'd signed up for his class blindly, walked into the classroom, and in the doorway, I looked in the room, there were 9 kids. And I said to myself, no, I don't want to go to this class. If I cut it, they'll know I'm not here, you know. I wanted a big lecture hall so that, you know, I could sleep in,
Right,
you know,
of
like we
course.
all did as
Please.
freshmen. So I turned around and started to leave to go to the registrar's office to drop the class, and he started to call roll. And your last name begins with A, you're at the top of the thing, and I heard him say Mitchell Albom. Now, I could have kept walking because he didn't know it was me. I could have just kept walking and ignored my name, dropped the class, and I promise if I had done that, you and I would not be speaking right now. And anything that I have done since that anyone knows me for, these books or movies or anything else, would never have happened. And because I felt guilty hearing my name called, because it's hard if somebody calls your name out, you know, you just can't keep walking.
Right.
So I kind of slid in and I said, here. And he said, is it Mitch or Mitchell? Which do you prefer? That was the first thing he said to me. And I was really kind of touched by that, because nobody ever asks me that. I have one of those names that it can be Mitch, Mitchell, Mitchie. I've been called all of it. So I said to him, well, Mitch, my friends call me Mitch. And he said, Mitch it is. And Mitch, and I said, yeah. He says, I hope one day you'll think of me as your friend. So I knew that cutting the class was out of the question at that point.
That ruined
but
that.
that's really started that whole relationship. Now, think about that, and I would have missed all that if I had just kept walking. So when you say, oh, think about that one thing that happened, it's even thinner than that. It's one moment that my whole life would have changed if I took a right turn instead of a left turn. So I never forget that, you know.
Yeah, and that's one moment you would not go back and
No,
change.
I'd leave that one the way it was.
Yeah, no saying twice to that one.
No twices to that one.
Well, on behalf of the world, we're glad you didn't
Oh, thank you.
drop that class.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Thank you so much, Mitch.
My pleasure. It's been really nice talking to you. Thank you
Good.
for having me on.
Any other questions or anything we didn't get to? I mean, I think we got to a lot about the book.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, you were when you get to the point where you're saying enough, stop talking about it. I think we probably have. Yeah.
Well, I feel like the book speaks for itself. You've said enough. You have to say some things about it, but this is not a hard sell.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to say what happened. It's
Right.
interesting, and we had
Yeah.
things to talk about that were
Yeah.
based on parts of the book.
Right.
But I don't like to give away the things. It's like when you go see a movie trailer
Right.
and it tells you the whole movie.
I know. You're right.
You don't need to know. Be
Good.
intrigued or mix it up and then whatever.
All right. Well, hopefully we gave them enough to whet their appetite.
I'm sure we did. I have no doubt. Are you starting to think of people in your head to play the parts?
Yeah. I have kind of a look for Alfie and for Gianna. Gianna was based on my wife. I what they say in football, you outkick your coverage, you know. I outkicked my coverage. Anyone who sees the two of us together goes, she must be nearsighted. But my wife is very beautiful, dark-haired, kind of a little exotic looking. So it needs to be somebody like that. And as far as Alfie's concerned, it could be anybody. But there's a character a detective, who interrogates Alfie, because the story is kind of told in the past tense, and Alfie gets arrested at the beginning and for suspicion of cheating on a roulette wheel at a casino because he wins 3 straight times. And as he tries, and the detective is kind of this grizzled, sort of tired, weary, like, I've heard it all, buddy, you know. And as Alfie starts to tell him, I didn't cheat. But I'll tell you my story. I have this magical power. And the guy's going, yeah, okay, fine. You know, and he's that cynical kind of guy. And that guy, Paul Weitz and I have talked about, the director of the movie. We want to get John C. Reilly. You know John C. Reilly?
Yeah, I do know John C. Reilly.
So he would be
Okay,
perfect because he can
okay.
play like that kind of, you got to be kidding me guy. But he also has a heart because he changes over the course of the book. And I think John C. Reilly's an amazing actor, so he'd be great.
And you're not going to give me a name for Alfie or Gianna?
Oh, any great actor can play Alfie. It just has to be somebody who you believe could learn something, could change, because Alfie changes a lot from the kid that he is till later.
Will you
So-
have any say in it?
Yeah, you know, they always say to you, oh, we're going to give you meaningful consultation, which I think generally means they pick the person and then they want you to say yes. and say, you like this person, right? and I go, yes, see, that was meaningful consultation.
Those network execs.
I know that. Well, I'm not going to name
Give
any
me a
names.
couple. Give me a couple, because this is going to be way before, so it's going to be fun.
If I have to name an actress, and please, I'm sorry, because I don't know this person, but Haley Steinfeld really kind of looks the part and has that kind of smarts and sensibility. I've seen a number of her movies, and she'd be a really good Gianna.
And who's
and-
Alfie?
Alfie. Ryan Gosling would be a good Alfie because he can play kind of a, you're rooting for him, but by the same token, he's a guy who made mistakes, so he's good that way and about that right age. Nicholas Hoult, he was the boy in About a Boy, but he's grown up and he's a very good actor. He plays Lex Luthor, I think, in the
Okay.
Superman movie, but he's a really good actor. And very talented. It's not for me to say. I mean, I know it's a fun thing to do.
It is fun.
But, really, I would take anybody who found the story moving, Margot Robbie once recorded a video or something saying that 5 People You Meet in Heaven was like one of her favorite books. And from that point forward, I thought, well, she should play Marguerite in the 5 People You Meet in Heaven, or maybe she could play Gianna in Twice.
Yeah.
You know, but everybody wants all those the same people, but John C. Riley, not that many people are always popping his name up, but he'd be a great detective. So who knows?
Well, I think it's fun. I have a friend, my friend Heather, who wrote a memoir, and they're basically taking it around, and they've been working on the screenplay for a while. And she and I have a blast talking about who would play who. We love it. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
So you don't have to reveal everybody, but it could be fun, I think.
It'll be fun. I guess I always feel like then somehow somebody's going to get that to them, and they're going to say,
they're gonna feel bad.
and then they're going to feel bad that they don't, and then you're going to run into them, and then so.
Yeah, I get it. You want to avoid that.
I'd be better off just keeping my opinions to myself. Yeah.
So this was cool. So let's see the book. It's called Twice by Mitch or Mitchell Albom.
Or Mitchie.
But we call
Mitch.
him Mitch.
That's right.
So it's Twice, and it's out now. You can get it wherever you get your books.
Yes.
And
Internet, bookstores, libraries, friends' collection that you steal off the shelf, whatever, wherever you get your books.
And then also wherever you get your movies eventually.
And Netflix. I know that one's going to be on Netflix, so it'll be coming to a Netflix near you.
Near you, I like it.
Netflix is always near you, isn't it? Wherever
is.
you go. And it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank
you.
you. It's been a real pleasure as well. I appreciate having a rabbi in the seat across from me.
Well, a faux rabbi. Yeah.